Hello and welcome to this BCS, the Chartered Institute for IT interview. Today I'm with Rod Jackson, the Chief Executive of aap3, a leading IT services and recruitment company. Rod, thank you for joining us today. Now, I wonder if we could start off, if you could just briefly describe what it is you do here at aap3.
Well, aap3 has been in business now for about just over 12 years actually. Started off as a recruitment company, specialising mainly in IT recruitment, although we do have some other small bits and pieces we do. And that was the first 5-6 years of the business. And then we branched out into IT managed services. And now we have two branches of the business, IT managed service and recruitment. And over the last 5 years, we've expanded ourselves globally. So we have a fairly big operation now in the US and cover the whole of Europe.
So what sort of things do you, when you talk about managed services, what sort of services are they that you provide?
Well, pretty much everything from a call centre environment where we do remote managed service for different customers who, we look after their IT portfolio. We do network installations, network design. We have a big practice around telepresence, that's next generation video conferencing. And so pretty much anything from supplying labour right the way through to a fully IT managed service. Okay,
so obviously that sort of area of your business is clearly growing. Are you seeing that as a sort of an overall trend that people are buying in these sort of services these days rather than maybe doing it themselves?
Yes, I think it's an interesting question because the way we position it is that we talk about core and context in our business model. And if I can just draw a parallel to what that really means, a business when it first starts off puts a lot of its resource, a lot of its effort into its core activities, clearly. And as that business matures, a lot of activities start to become more peripheral, things like finance and HR and IT systems and so on. And more of their core capability gets dragged into that stuff. So by engaging a company like ourselves, where IT is our core, we can give them a better service, hopefully at a cheaper price, and allow them to put more of their core resources back onto developing their business and making their business more successful. So that's kind of the premise of what we do, and that does resonate quite successfully across a lot of our customers. Okay.
Now, obviously, IT underpins so much of many businesses these days. Do you think, in the ways that you supply services to businesses, is it becoming almost like a utility, like the gas and the electricity and the lights and stuff, or do you still see it as sort of a part of the sort of a business's innovation sort of structure?
Again, there's probably two answers to that question. I think for the base level services, it should almost be like the dial tone on a telephone. It should be there. You shouldn't have to think about it. It should be as cheap as you can make it, as quick and efficient as you can make it, and that should be there as a given. But then you've got the value-added services, the things that differentiate you. And if you look at the way that the industry is moving now, the sad thing from an IT professional's point of view is that a lot of our customers now know more about IT than some of our professionals.
Right.
From a very young age, people are brought up now with technology in their hands, and just keeping up with some of that is very difficult as a business. So we've got very, very intelligent, very well educated consumers of our products now, and we have to stay one step ahead. So that's a big challenge for us.
So, following on from that, what other sort of things do you see as challenges for chief executives and CIOs over the next 18 months? Is it this growing sort of consumerization and the millennials coming into the business, or?
It is to a degree. I mean, there's a new buzzword in the industry now called "bring your own device." That's adding a lot of complexity to the way people work. In some ways, it's a simple process because you can choose what device you use. But from an IT professional point of view, it's how do you make that device secure? How do you stop that device, causing problems on the network?
Sure.
How do you make sure it's compatible with what you want it to do? How do you allow it to continue to do what the consumer who's bought it wants it to do, whilst still allowing it to do work in the office and so on? So that's one element of business change. Beyond that, I think if you look at the ubiquitous nature now of IT, it's in absolutely everything that we do. We talk about network of networks, we talk about big data, all of these aspects of the industry are starting to become prevalent. And how do we maximize the capability that's out in everybody's hand? Mobility is a big issue. Networking in remote areas is becoming more and more as an opportunity. So it's literally pervasive in everything we do.
And do you touch much in terms of cloud services as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So a lot of companies now are looking to take their their portfolio of servers that they usually had in the back cupboard or whatever, especially the small companies. And they no longer, it used to be a man and a dog looking after their IT portfolio. Those companies now are looking for more professional services from companies like ourselves and other companies in similar places, and they take those portfolios and put them into the cloud, and you can get a much more robust service, a more ubiquitous nature of what they're getting serviced on.
And do you find your clients, in terms of the security aspect, obviously if a company is offloading its servers and its data to a server farm somewhere, which could be anywhere in the world,
Sure.
how are they coping in terms of the security? Is that something else I would imagine you help provide?
Yeah, we do a lot of work on the IT security side. Security is a never-ending problem for everybody. If you look at the amount of money that's just been invested, in fact, in the paper today there was talk about the military hiring cyber hackers to go do work with them, and that's the level of complexity now that we're at. There's a lot of talk about the next problem in the industry is cyber attacks, and you could bring down governments and whole countries. Yeah. So it is a massive problem in the industry. But if you take it down just to the local businesses, they have a lot of data that they need to maintain and support and secure, and it's a problem that we have to be very cognizant of. So a lot of industry specialists are working on it, and we're absolutely in the middle of that as a service supplier, for that. Yeah.
Now, one of the big things that BCS focuses on is the chartered IT professional, raising the standard of the IT profession. Now, you touched on the fact that a lot of businesses now are getting very IT savvy people coming in. What are your thoughts on setting a standard of professionalism within IT? I
think it's essential. I used to say years ago when I was working in large corporations that the IT in large corporations should be run like a business anyway. I think it costs a lot of money. They can easily influence the bottom line of a company. They can be a strategic advantage in terms of helping with sales and technology and so on. So you should be treating the professionals within the IT organization as business leaders. And in fact, you've seen in several instances now where CIOs have actually become the CEOs of companies because it's one of the few parts of the company that touches everything. So they do get a good broad brush of what's going on in the business right across the board. So I think having a professional training and a professional qualification that is business related as well as technically related is very important. So I'm a big supporter of it.
Yeah. Now, obviously, a large part of your business is also IT recruitment. What sort of issues are you seeing in regards to that?
This is again the problem is probably not going to be a surprise to you is finding good people. It's a sad case that an awful lot of the IT professional training now is coming out of the third world countries. There's a huge amount of labour supply coming out of India and China and so on. And it's sad that in the UK especially, and in the US where we also have a big presence, we're seeing less and less good qualified people coming out of universities and colleges. And that's something that I think needs to be addressed urgently.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Do you think there's any one particular reason?
I don't know. I think that we've just lost the plot a little bit, to be honest with you. I think we've invested in other types of skill sets and almost given it away to these other countries who have over the last 10, 15 years spent a huge amount of money on that side of the education system, and therefore they're reaping the rewards now, and we're seeing the problems.
Yeah, I read something just at the weekend. The chief executive of the Raspberry Pi Foundation, he was saying that we've become almost a culture of consumers rather than creators.
Yes.
He's hoping that people will start playing with Raspberry Pis and becoming creators again. I guess that's going to be the way forward.
Well, and I think Raspberry is interesting because it's one of the few computers that you can take the lid off and poke your screwdriver in and learn something from. I mean, these days your handheld devices are all locked down. You can't even change the battery on most of the products. So you interface it at a very superficial level. So to be able to understand what really happens in the bits and bytes of that is something that I think we're losing the ability to do. So those kind of initiatives I think are very important.
And obviously there's a change in the teaching of IT in schools as well.
Sure. A lot of it's software orientated. When you talk about the platforms, you really talk about the presentation layer now.
very few people these days understand the base level code that goes into a computer. You have to get into some very serious degree courses to be able to get to that level of information, and I think that's quite sad. In the old days, certainly when I came through, you go to punch cards and all sorts of stuff like that. But I'm not saying we go back to that. But at least you had a base understanding of what was going on behind the presentation layer of the PC or the device that you were working with. These days, a lot of the modern programming languages don't ever touch more than just a very superficial level of that, and I think that's something that we're missing.
Okay. So on top of all of that, what do you see as maybe the next biggest challenge in terms of IT over the sort of coming years? Would you think it's going to be sort of environmental factors, or will it be the skill shortage, or
I think all of those things. I think usability of IT is becoming very interesting. I think we've been talking about this for years now, the use of natural data types. So being able to talk to your computer, being able to get, I think Siri as an example is now starting to become useful. Last night, I don't even saw the Gadget show, they were talking about language translators, and suddenly they're now starting to become more useful. So I think we're seeing the kind of footsteps now moving towards use of natural data types. That then makes it more user friendly for everybody to use. Everybody's got multiple devices these days. Even if you go to third world countries, the first thing you see, they'll have their mobile phone. They may be living in a shed, but they've got a mobile phone. So it's becoming almost the device of choice over and above anything else. And everything that you do is now starting to be linked to that. So you can order your shopping, you can buy a car, you can do whatever you want. I think that's one aspect now that is changing the way we basically live, work and play, to quote a Cisco term. It is really very much in everybody's daily life. The next generation of technology that's going to be interesting as well, though, I think, is this 3D printing.
Okay.
I think that's where you're going to start to see stuff that people like to see, touch and feel becoming more available as these printer prices come down and the technology gets more sophisticated, and they're probably 10 or 15 years away. But that's going to be the next generation of interesting things that changes the...
What sort of things do you think people will be making? Would you think they'll be making... I mean, obviously somebody's made a gun. I'm not suggesting that that's going to be the way, but do you think it's going to maybe... Obviously, years ago, people used to... if you had something, you made it yourself.
Sure.
Or you would, and then it sort of spun out and people started buying other things.
I think it'll be across the board. So if you think about it in terms of enterprises, and you can see it in the medical field as an example. You can see them making joints and things like that to order almost, and then operating on somebody to put it in there. And so you can see it certainly in the medical field. You can see it in the car industry. You can see components being made in garages rather than having to stock parts and things of that nature.
Okay.
And then if you look at in the home market, things like golf balls maybe. I don't know. I mean, there's a million things you can when you start to think about this stuff. And as the technology gets to a point where it's sophisticated enough to manufacture it, it could easily change a lot of the consumer things that we go online and order and then ship, etc. Could change the whole of that sort of not for everything, but certainly there's some interesting parts that could be made. And it could be the next sort of big thing in the industry.
Okay. Now you mentioned briefly about big data, and obviously that ties in with mobile because every text we send, every message we put on Facebook or whatever, it creates more data. Now, how do you think we're going to be able to cope? Because obviously this data is just going to accelerate, isn't it?
Well, you look at IP as an example. We've got to move to IP version whatever it is now, and Cat6 wiring, and just the sheer volume is stressing the entire world's computing ability, which is good news in some ways because it means that there's more capacity required, which is better for the industry. But at some point, this data becomes so massive. It's almost inconceivable what's being stored and how you can access it and what you can do with it. And so I think the whole big data discussion is all about how do we break it back down into bite-sized pieces that we can actually do something sensible with. Because typically what's happening now is people are storing more and more bits of information, and there's a huge amount of duplication, there's a huge amount of time critical factors to them. So all that stuff needs to be sorted out. But I think eventually we will get to that point, and you can come the day when you just hit. I mean, you've got to be Google pretty much today. I can remember years ago when I was a kid. If you wanted to know something, you'd either make it up or you go and get the encyclopedia out. And arguments between people used to take weeks to resolve. These days, you flick Google open and bang, it's there. So that's already changing the sort of way we operate and work with each other. If you get the whole data, the big data model figured out, it becomes a whole new way of operating, and I think that's going to be very exciting for the world. But I think we're a few years away yet from getting that sorted out, but a lot of focus on that now.
Okay. Now, one final question. What do you see as the biggest sort of challenge in terms of the UK IT industry? What sort of factors can you see that may be holding us back, or the things that we can make the most of?
Yeah, well, we already talked about education. I think there's definitely an investment needed in getting more education to people who are going to work in the industry. So there's a lot of technology education out there. So people come out with good technical qualifications, but how you relate that to a real job, to the world we work in, I think that's important. So there's a little bit more focus on that. I think investment in things like networks. I mean, if you go to the US, which I do a lot, they've invested a lot of money in wide area networks for whole towns and cities and things. Yeah. So you're no longer scrabbling around trying to find a 3G signal and all the rest of it. The Wi-Fi is there. Yeah. And I think that would be a good thing for the UK to invest more in, because suddenly then your device becomes more, you are connected, you've always connected, and it becomes cheaper. So at the moment there's two issues I have when I travel. Is one, roaming is without a doubt the biggest problem, and it is now a barrier to success. Now at the moment it's a barrier because it's actually being generated. It's generating income for the mobile carriers, and so to try and convince them that they shouldn't be doing that is a difficult thing. But at some point, everybody's got to wake up, smell the roses, and move this thing forward. But so take the roaming charges off, get Wi-Fi enablement on much broader campus levels, and then eventually into regions and sites. I think that would be a great step forward. And also then move to the next generation of technology, where people at the moment the devices are so different. Pretty much we have 5 or 6 things we want to do with the device. So let's make those 5 or 6 things ubiquitous on every device. Let's make the way you do it ubiquitous, because there's no point differentiating between flicking this thing right on one device and left on another. It just makes no sense. So let's standardize a little bit on some of the basics, and then the value add stuff that goes around that can be as unique as people want to make it. So I think a few of those things would really make this country take off in terms of the computing environment, in terms of the people side of it, and then let's get some consortiums of businesses working together rather than apart to really push this thing forward.
And what about sort of underlying infrastructures like fibre instead of copper? And
Of course. I mean, Virgin Media is a great example. So I shouldn't say this out loud, but if you look at where BT is invested in copper, whereas it used to be NTL, it was taken over by Virgin, has gone the fibre route. You look at the quality of speeds and the thing that's come out of that. So let's get everybody again, it's the point about working together. Let's not try and push one over another. Let's invest in one technology and make that the thing that we all sort of relate to.
Brilliant. Rod, thank you ever so much for your time.